Today I'm out in the shop troubleshooting my does not crank condition on my 2013 Mustang GT Premium with a 5-liter engine. Now, I had it running just a few minutes ago because I live on a hill and it's a manual transmission, so I was able to roll start it. But so it starts and runs, but the engine does not crank, so the starter doesn't turn over. So we need to troubleshoot that starting circuit. So I'm going to start out by making sure that I've got a good strong battery. This is a 2013 Mustang. It was made in June of 13, and it's now October, the day before Halloween in October of 2022. So the battery is an original battery. It's a Motorcraft battery. And so let's first of all actuate my gauge mode voltage 11.7 volts. So that's, the battery's not drained. That's the first check. Let's see, let's turn off of our air here. The second thing we're going to do is attempt to start the car again. I'm not hearing anything. Of course, the starter relay is out in the battery junction box under the hood, or the engine compartment distribution box under the hood. So let's roll down the windows and pop the hood. So the relay is out here in the battery junction box under the hood. I roll down the windows and open the hood with the hopes that I can hear that relay click out there when I actuate it. So I'm pushing in the clutch. It's a manual transmission. Pushing in the clutch and then trying to be quiet so I can hear that relay. Oh yeah. Do you hear the relay? I can hear the relay out there. So I'm going to get a buddy to help me turn the key so I can go out and touch that relay. That'll be the good indication. So let's go ahead and take a look at the wiring diagram first. So if we look at the wiring diagram from the wiring diagram manual, starting system 20-1. The starting system on the 13 or 2010 through 2014 Mustang is fairly complex by 1960s standards, where you would just have an ignition switch, a starter relay or starter solenoid, and then a starter. So this starts with the battery here in the upper left, and it goes through a fuse 19 here in the engine compartment in the battery junction box, and then it goes through a starter relay both here in the battery junction box. So that's fuse 19, which is a 30 amp, and then the starter relay, which on this diagram is not numbered. My car has a clutch, so the manual transmission with a clutch switch, and if you have an automatic, it has a neutral safety switch or a switch that determines that the car is in park. It has a fuse in the smart junction box, or the passenger compartment fuse panel, which is fuse 27, which is a 20 amp, and then the ignition switch, or the keyed ignition switch, and here's your start circuit that goes to the powertrain control module. So the clutch switch, neutral safety switch have an input to the powertrain control module, and then there's an output from the powertrain control module that tells the starter relay to pull in and provides power to the starter solenoid, and which pulls in the starter. So if this was the 2005 F-150, which I did a video on, I could simply just crawl under the truck. There's plenty of room. It's got a 2-inch lift with larger all-terrain tires on it, I can just crawl under the truck and determine if there's voltage here at the starter. So that's continuous voltage. Battery cable connects directly to the starter, so that's hot all the time. And then the switched power coming from the starter relay down to the starter solenoid. That one you have to turn the key to see if there's power there. But on this we can easily check to see if the starter relay is pulling in or not, and then before crawling under the car. So on the truck I would simply go under and measure voltage here. If I have battery voltage there, I'm good. And then I would run my lead so I could see my multimeter or my test light. I use a multimeter. Actuate the key, and then I can see if I've got power there. Then I know it's the starter. Here I'm gonna check that relay first before jacking up the car, because I can't get underneath the car without jacking it up. This is a diagram of the battery junction box. So here's all the fuses, and then relays and relays. So here's a list of the relays. So we're looking for the starter relay, number 52, which is a full ISO relay, which is the one in the upper right hand corner of the box. So notice the notch here. So if we go over to our fuse panel, you see from the diagram the notch here in the upper left can help us orientate ourselves. Right here, the notch here, so we know that this is our relay that's in suspect. And again, we're looking for fuse 19 for the starter relay. Now that's the only thing that's on that fuse, so that's fuse 19, which is a 30 amp, and it's pink. So fuse 19, 1, 2, 3, over 2, fuse 19, which is a 30 amp, and it's pink, and we can see that it's not blown. You can see the little wire that's down inside there is not blown on that, and there's no discoloration whatsoever from the heat. So that fuse appears to be okay. Okay, since I have a helper today, I'm going to put my finger on the relay, the starter relay, and I'm going to feel for it to actuate and listen. Okay, helper, go ahead, turn the key. Oh yeah, this relay is actuating. Okay, turn the key on and off a couple times, and I can, standing out here, I can definitely hear it and feel it. Of course, the fuel pump relay is also actuating, but the starter relay is definitely actuating. Okay, so that tells me, since my starter relay is actuating, that the powertrain control module is telling it to actuate by actuating the key, that everything, including this fuse, everything, including this relay, is fine. It's just that my starter motor is not turning. So I need to check. This cable still could be in suspect, and this wire could be in suspect, but it's either the starter solenoid or the starter motor is defective. Just to verify, I'm going to check the voltage at the starter, the two locations I described earlier. I'm going to connect my negative lead right to the negative on the battery. And as I climb under the car, by stark comparison, this has a lot of room underneath it compared to the F-150. Right here you can see the positive battery terminal coming down, and then right behind it, right under here, you can see that relay connection, that keyed connection right there to energize the solenoid. Here's the solenoid, and then the starter right behind it, right there. So I'm going to check voltage right there to start with. Okay, so I got my positive lead attached there, and my multimeter reads 13 volts. I have the battery charger connected to my battery right now, so that's good. And then we're going to connect to that switch connection, and I'm going to go actuate the key. Touch my leads together and zero out my voltmeter. Yeah, it's close. Anyway, let's put my multimeter where I can read it. Okay, with my car up on jack stands and my lead connected, let's question the clutch. Oh! Well, there she started. Huh. Huh. There it started. I don't know if I've got a moisture issue. It's like this little weep hole appears to be shiny right there. It's damp. Can't tell that it's damp. It's got like a grommet right here. You can get it to autofocus on that grommet. I don't know if we've got a moisture issue. Of course, my car is really dirty living on a gravel road. That concludes the troubleshooting portion of this video. Now we're going to move on to a starter replacement on the 5-liter engine. This same Motorcraft starter fits on a number of Ford vehicles. Of course, we're working on the Mustang. This fits from 2005 through 2014 Ford Mustang. So it either fits the 4.6 liter or 5 liter, probably not the older 4.6 liters, but anyway, from 2005 on. It fits a number of Super Duty trucks from 1999 through 2013, and the Ford Excursion, Expedition, of course the F-150, and probably both looks like the 5 liter, probably in the 4.6 liter in that truck, and then of course then the Lincoln variants, the Blackwood, Mark LT, and Navigator. This appears to be the same starter that goes in the 2005 F-150 with the 5.4 liter engine. I just did a video on that. So I've just replaced the starter on my 2005 F-150. So 3 starter bolts, 3 mounting locations, the gear, starter solenoid. Remember, this lug is hot, and this starter, Motorcraft starter, didn't come with the washer or nuts here. That's nice. Let's see if we got a package here. No. Of course, they might have fallen out of the box. This box wasn't in the greatest of shape, but so tools and consumables you need to do this job are a good multimeter, or at least a test light, some electrical leads to help lengthen your leads on your multimeter so that you can read, unless you have a buddy that can help you actuate the key, turn the key for you. It's helpful to have some leads. A good light source, of course. Jack stands and a jack. You can't get under the car without lifting the car up. For this starter, it's helpful to use 3/8 drives, extensions, and a ratchet. and 10mm socket. It doesn't have to be an impact, but I like using impacts when I can, and this one's a 6-point. So you want to use 6-point sockets so you're not stripping out, especially those blind bolts. They're hard to see. The one on the top you have to do by feel. So I actually use this socket and a 1/4-inch drive ratchet on that top bolt. But for the two side bolts, the bottom and the side bolt, I used the extension, a wobble extension, and a ratchet to remove the main battery cable at the starter, a 14mm, and a 10mm socket for that small connection, that switch connection on the starter. And of course, clean up those electrical contacts on both the battery. Use a battery terminal brush and a brush on the electrical connector down on the starter. And of course, a new starter. I'm going to start by removing the negative battery terminal. It's a 5/16. Remember that main terminal on the starter goes directly to the positive on the battery, so it's hot at all times. Make sure whenever you remove your battery terminals, you always start with a negative terminal first. I'm not going to remove the positive, I'm just simply remove the negative today and place it to the side so it doesn't go back on. Of course, now is the time before you put the terminals back on to clean and service your batteries. Be sure to watch the Stiles Automotive video on cleaning and servicing your batteries. This starter has a little plastic cover over the terminal. Just pulls right off. Just kind of nice. Keep your wrench from hitting the terminals. Another angle here in between the control arm and the frame. So here's your positive, and then again you're switched from through your relay and the ignition key right here. It's 14mm and 10mm, and then 3 10mm head-sized mounting bolts. I'm going to start with removing the electrical leads, and then of course the mounting bolts to remove the starter. Alright, now that I've got the two leads disconnected, I went with my multimeter with an alligator clip back on this lead one more time and turned my key on and made sure that I have power coming to here when the key is turned, and I do. So just to verify, so that verify it's the starter that's bad. It proves that everything else in the system is working fine. So here's the trouble with that top bolt. You have an interference with the engine mount, with this bolt that's on the engine mount, and you can see, pan back here where the starter opening here, you can see the back of the engine casing here causes a problem. The top bolt fits right here. It's in the way. So what I ended up doing was, I'll put the bolt back in there for you. I ended up using a 1/4-inch ratchet and a short socket, short 10mm socket like this, and it just cleared the header over here, over on the passenger side or the right side. You can see that. So it just gives just enough, and I could get 2 fingers on it, stick my hand up there and hold it here on the head, and my other hand with 2 fingers on the end of the ratchet was just enough to break that loose. And then I had to take it all the way out with this ratchet. I couldn't get any fingers on it until it was almost all the way out. You can see here, this interferes until it's almost all the way out. I could get my fingers up in here like this when it was probably, you know, that far out. So it took a while to get it out. So I'm going to take it back out here. It's tough. Tough bolt to get out. The other two bolts, relatively easy to get to. Here's the middle one right here. That broke really easy, and here's the bottom one. So I'm broke this one first, then the top one, then I'm going to take the bottom one off. So after getting the three 10mm head size mounting bolts back in the starter, and then hooking up that switched connection, that 12-volt switch connection down with a 10mm nut, and then the 14mm nut on the battery cable down at the starter, and then putting the little cover back on, the last thing to do is reconnect the ground cable here at the battery. And since I was doing a lot of troubleshooting and messing around, I put a battery charger on the battery while I'm doing the work to make sure my battery has a full charge. So it's now at a full charge, so I can remove that and hook the negative battery terminal back up to the battery and tighten up the clamp, and I should be good to go. So make sure when you're doing this job that you're using safety glasses, especially on a dirty car like mine. Make sure you're using jack stands, and make sure that you remove the jack from underneath the car, or make sure all the load is off of the jack. So my floor jack is off here to the side of the shop, and it's fully supported on jack stands. So that concludes the video. If you found it helpful, let me know in the comments, and please subscribe. I look forward to your comments. Okay, so I turned the steering wheel all the way to the left side. Let's put that back in the center before I put it on the ground. Radio coming on because I had the battery disconnected. Okay, the moment of truth. The clutch is in. There she goes. Sounding pretty good.
You like that?
There you go. Does that make you happy?